everyone, and welcome back to another episode of In the DeNovo. I'm your co-host, Sarah Lennox, the Chief Growth Officer with DeNovo Treasury, joined by our CEO and founder, Will K. Grace, and we have a special guest for you today, Malinda Anthony, who joins our organization as our Managing Director of Business Development. So we have an exciting segment for you all planned. This is the first one of 2026, so we're really glad to be back in the seat and reconnect with everyone. Will, if you wanted to say a few words and open us up, we'll introduce Malinda, and we have a nice little show planned for everybody.
Thanks, Sarah. It's been an exciting start to 2026 here at DeNovo Treasury, and as you probably are noticing, our viewers and those that follow us regularly, this is our first episode in 2026, and that's due to the tremendous growth that we've been experiencing here. And we've been onboarding new team members that have incredible backgrounds, and we've been fortunate to have. I'm so grateful that we've been able to attract this experienced and wonderful talent. Starting here with Malinda, we're going to be talking to here today, and I've been pinching myself at just the great fortunes that we've had. And so we've been busy behind the scenes getting everybody situated in their new roles, and getting everybody in the right place so that we can take advantage of this wonderful gift we've been given. So extremely grateful, and we're excited to have everybody joining us today and to get started with our podcast series, our interview series here again in 2026. And so, yeah, let's just get started. Like I said, we're really excited to have Malinda joining us and kind of have a break the ice type of question for her and talk about the DeNovo origin story for Malinda. And she's had an incredible career, as you're going to learn. And before we kind of dive into the business side of that, I want to hear about, Malinda, your very first job in a bank. And you've had a very long and illustrious career, let's say, an illustrious career in banking. And so let's talk about your first job and maybe one lesson that you learned from those early days that you still use as an executive today. And welcome.
Yeah. Thanks. And I'm excited to be a part of the DeNovo team. So and this is my first podcast, so a lot of new things for me.
Yeah.
My first position in banking was back then the title was secretary to the head of commercial real estate at a bank, and now you would call them administrative assistants. And the lesson learned that I had with that position was dress for the position that you want next, right? Or you aspire to. And why that really helped me a lot is, even though I was, quote, just a secretary, right? I dressed like I was a commercial lender or, a senior leader. And so lots of times if they needed someone to go into a meeting and help take notes, for a board meeting, I was dressed like the part, right? And so I would get pulled in last minute to board meetings. I'd get pulled into events, volunteer activities, go and just help with maybe one of the executives that are speaking at a ribbon cutting. And so it gave me exposure to a lot of different people, other folks outside of the commercial real estate group. And it really helped direct my career path throughout the years, as I always made sure I was prepared and dressed and ready for anything that might come up that wasn't planned. So I learned how to be spontaneous and dress for my future success. And I will say, I did not, like a lot of folks early on, you don't have a lot of funds, right, to do that. I've encouraged other folks starting out to shop at thrift stores, because you can get very classic looking clothing for your that position that you're going for. And what happens is, yes, you can get it pretty inexpensive, but they usually don't fit the greatest. So alterations, I'll give another little tidbit for people. Alterations, find an alterations group close to you. They'll be your best friend, because you can go get that $5 outfit at a thrift store, and for $5 more, they'll make it tailored so it looks really nice on you, and you got a $10 outfit.
That's great advice. And I would say that we've got listeners and folks that follow DeNovo Treasury that have titles all over the board, right? And so that's going to be valuable advice for your lesson is for folks that listen to our podcast. And I would say that and I don't know about you, Malinda, but I think you could piggyback on that. Number one, executive assistant or whatever the title was, even back then was secretary.
Yes.
That role is way more important than any value that or name that you can put on it. You're in rooms that people like strive to get into their entire career. You are hearing things that's privileged that frankly some of us don't get to hear till mid part of our career. And
Yes.
so
And you know
that
what?
is
It really helped me. I realized how important right-hand person to that
absolutely,
executive, and it really helped me value and
yeah,
realize how tough that job is. And so
yeah.
later on in my career, when I would have the chance to have someone assist me, you realize how important they are to your success and to the company's success.
Never discount the role of an
Yes.
admin.
Great
They
point.
sometimes are the most powerful person in your organization, whether
That's
you
true.
realize it or not. And I've seen many in my career that have moved beyond that type of role.
Yeah.
And so, and then I think that's also kind of something else. And I'm sorry, I don't want to get too far off the subject, but I don't know about you, Melinda, but I've never advanced beyond something without asking for something. And so I think
Yes.
like probably moving from a secretary role, you had to ask for your next role, right?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I've always had to ask for something. And it usually starts with asking for more than the work I'm doing. And it's always a stretch. And it's usually something that somebody else is doing, that somebody else doesn't want to do. So I think those are pretty good career advices that we can give people while we're talking about this.
Totally agree.
Yeah, good. So I think moving on, and Sarah, I'm just going to jump to the next one if you don't mind.
Go for it. Yeah.
Yeah, no. So this is also kind of a fun one, maybe more from a travel perspective, like this we call it a coffee travel question. Someone who's constantly on the move for business development. Like, what's your must-have travel essential or go-to coffee order that keeps you fueled for a day of networking? Like when I travel, and this is kind of more personal, I always travel with my own blanket and sheets because I've got like this germaphobe thing going on. And so that's probably more personal. But I'm sure it might be something business that might be more relevant for you.
Well, mine, I'm a multi-million miler, so I have
Oh,
flown
yeah.
a lot, right? I've traveled a lot throughout my career, and my go-to, I'm not a coffee drinker. People that know
Yeah.
me would say Melinda does not need any more caffeine. So, but my go-to thing is making sure I have tennis shoes, because I think what I found early on is just going for either walk or working out in the morning before the day starts, gets my body going and gets my mind going so that I hit the ground running, every day for work. The other reason why I keep tennis shoes is after a long, stressful day at work, it's really good. I love to go for walks after work,
Yeah.
just to kind of decompress, get my thoughts together and get ready for the next day. And then thirdly, being that multi-million miler, tennis shoes, sometimes you take the heels off, put those on and run to catch that connection so you can get
Well,
home to your family. So
yeah.
it has three big reasons why tennis shoes, if I have to carry them on, I'll do that, but I always have tennis shoes.
Well,
Also tough because I've had that experience recently. Do you have a least favorite airport that if you have to book it in, that's the one that you absolutely hope is not it?
I bet we'll all have the same answer, but go ahead.
Yeah, it's tough
And
to
nothing
know.
against, I have a lot of friends in this state. But I will go. I avoid Atlanta whenever possible.
Hmm.
I'll do Detroit. I love Detroit. I love
Interesting.
LaGuardia. I love Minneapolis, probably
Yeah.
my number two or three, and Salt Lake City. As you can tell, I'm calling out Delta hubs, but Delta, to me, also has a little tidbit for a traveler. I think they have the best rewards program. Other
Yeah.
than maybe Southwest is pretty competitive in that, too as well. But yeah, Atlanta is my I try to avoid it at all costs.
Yeah.
Somehow I end up Yeah, I would hate to run through Atlanta. I have done it once, but I always end up having to run through O'Hare. And I don't know why my luck is like every time I go to Chicago or I'm connecting in Chicago, they make me run. So
And
if I can avoid Chicago
that's a
at all
big one.
costs as a connection, yeah, it's not small. And trust me, like I would hate to run in Atlanta too, but somehow I always end up running through O'Hare, and I don't know why my luck is like that. But can't imagine being a multi-million miler like that. That in itself is an accomplishment.
It is. Surprised neither of you said Newark. That's the one that I always
Oh yeah, yeah, you're right.
Newark?
Newark is my trap, like every
That's
time.
your trap.
Yeah, but
Really?
Atlanta's pretty close too. Newark and Atlanta are kind of like neck and neck for me. But Newark, every time. I'm stuck there every time. Anyway, well, good
Yeah,
then.
for a connection. I don't mind landing there if I'm going to New York. Sometimes if I can't get into
Yeah.
JFK
Sure.
LaGuardia, because you
No,
can
I
still
never get
drive
out of
in or
there.
get into the city pretty
Yeah.
pretty quickly. But just to digress, and you can cut this if you want to.
Yeah. Please, no, go.
I was going through my Newark. I have a lot of stories, but I'll just make this really brief. I was going through Newark. It was after 9/11, and there was a guy in front of me that I thought was a salesman displaying. He had a bottle, a large bottle, about I don't know, maybe a foot and a half tall, that had and it had a label that says Aqua Velvet. That's for those that might not know it, but that's an aftershave or a cologne for men.
Right.
And they told him he couldn't go through with this big, bottle that looked like it might be a display bottle. And he was right in front of me. I just wanted to get through security, catch my flight, right? I'm not someone that gets there super early. They said, you'll have to check it. He refused to check it. He opened the cap on this big Aqua Velvet bottle and dumped it on his head. It went everywhere on me and everything. He slammed it on there and went through it. They, of course, called security. The smell was unbelievable. And I thought, it's going to be my luck. Who am I going to be sitting next to in the plane? Is this Aqua
No.
Velvet guy? Luckily, he was on a plane. A security came and got him, but I got through it. But I'll never forget that smell. And of course, I smelled like it when I got on my plane because it splashed everywhere. So that's my Newark story.
Where were phones and social media then, right? To
Yeah,
catch,
exactly.
catch us from doing
I'm
that.
kind of dating myself. It was back, yeah, a little
No,
bit.
you're not dating yourself. No, hey, I used to get off the planes to get to the phone base just like everybody else did, Melinda.
Yeah.
In the calling card, yeah, there was. I remember I didn't even get out that card. You just like you just remember that 14-digit whatever it was, and then right. There's
Yes.
calling cards. Everybody's fighting to get to those telephone bays when you got off the phone. When I got off the plane, that's probably something Sarah has no idea about. No idea about.
I can remember my dad calling us from those phones because
Yeah. Oh,
the first like 7 years of my life, my dad worked internationally.
yeah.
And we were always like, I can remember what our home phone looked like in the kitchen, and my mom standing by it, like waiting for him to
Yeah.
call. So like I have like slivers of those kinds of memories, not from like my own personal use, but I can remember my dad
Sure.
traveling and like us waiting for the call. And
It
that
was-
was pre and post 9/11 travel too. So
That's all you saw, like this at the gates, just lined with phones.
the line, right? Yeah.
People sitting in those cubes with them. I mean, that's it. That's it. Anyway, we all digressed on that one. But that's a good digression. So, yeah, we're going to transition now. Well, no, we've got one more thing to talk about. So you spent a significant amount of time, like I did, in big bank world, and you held some really significant positions. But what was a specific light bulb moment for you that made you realize that your passion would be in serving and helping community financial institutions rather than staying with mega bank and being in that environment? Because Melinda, you can go anywhere. You could be working for any bank that you want to, and you've chosen to come work with us. And it's this is kind of this is a passion project, really, when you think about it.
Yeah. Early on in my career in banking, a lot of bankers serve on boards. I served on a lot of local community boards, specifically too around, low income housing and first time buyers, because I still have a passion for that. And and after you've been successful, kind of achieved what you wanted to do at the big banks, I was feeling this need to give back. And my aha moment was, when there was another change going on, I thought, this is my time to give back and leverage all that experience and knowledge that I've gained over the years and help the community banks and credit unions that employ our neighbors, right? Employ our family, invest in our communities, volunteer in our communities, help small business and middle-sized businesses be successful, which really runs the country, right? Not just the community, but the country. It's time for me to say, hey, you know what? Let me help them be more efficient, take some of the lessons learned that can be applied in that community bank so they can be more competitive, help meet the needs of the local communities and support their efforts, to help their communities thrive. So it's different, but there's a lot of assets that I can bring to the table for each unique situation to really to be able to give back. So my aha moment was time. I've done this, been there, done it. And now let's help other folks and other banks, be successful. I want them to stay independent. I want them to thrive, right? Because they do support our communities, and I think it's real important that the local FIs are very strong in the communities they serve, and I want to help with that. So it was the aha moment when I thought, wait, I've already achieved this. What's the next thing? I didn't have another outfit to wear for the next thing, so this is it.
You've gone through all the outfits. You're at like final boss outfit.
Yeah, I've been in operations. I've been in product. Yeah.
Awesome. No, it's great. That's a great answer.
It's going to be a little bit more business casual here with DeNovo Treasury.
Right.
Yes.
And getting back to those heels, you can wear some modified heels. You don't have to do the heels all the time, Linda.
Nope.
Yeah.
That's one of the things I love. I got some really fancy Skechers when I came to DeNovo.
Right. Exactly. Get some support. The same support you're giving the financial institutions. How do you like that? So, Sarah, do you want to do some of the other ones, or you want me to keep going? What do you want to do?
No, I felt like that was a really good segue into the next one. So, and I think I know what the answer is going to be, but obviously for our viewers, or you might have something else up your sleeve, but because of that big banking experience and now the passion you described for community financial institutions and the things that they actually do to support communities, smaller markets, smaller business, middle-sized businesses. Since you are working closely with them now through DeNovo Treasury, what do you see as their superpower that the big banks might overlook, or they just simply can't replicate because they're not in that space and they're not playing the same way?
I would say speed of adaptability is probably the number one thing. The larger you get, the slower. There's more talking heads, there's more processes and stuff you got to go through. You still have those same processes in a small community bank, but it's more streamlined, right?
Right.
I would also say, the second thing I see is the access to the senior and executive leadership, both internally, right? So that helps support that speed of adaptability for clients, or for something that's going in the industry, or for something going on in the community, or within the bank and their team members. But it's also for clients. One of the things that you kind of lose with the larger banks is that access to the top decision makers, that senior and executive group, and all the community banks I've worked with, they're very open and transparent with those executive leaders, and they're accessible. So I would say that. And then I would say the third thing I see is the true relationship banking for the small to middle market businesses and those community businesses. You kind of get lost as a number in they do a good job, but when you get down into the small business, the community middle market, sometimes those larger banks, it's not so much a relationship, it's more transactional. So which all that again supports the speed of adaptability for their target markets.
I really love that you said that because it actually makes the next question that was planned a little bit more interesting because that's not, I think, necessarily what someone might expect is that speed to adaptability and the agility factor that a smaller organization may have. And I completely agree because before DeNovo Treasury, I came from a global organization, an enterprise organization, and there's a lot of red tape, as it were, a lot of bureaucracy and a lot of politics, so to speak, that comes with working at larger organizations and in enterprise. So the next question then was for maybe sales professionals like yourself, like business development professionals, or um, I I think banking equivalent is relationship manager. In my head, I still go to like AE or account executive, whatever the equivalent might be for the banking side. If they were looking to make a similar jump from big banking to a community focused role, um, would that be a misconception that they might have about a smaller institution? That there's like this slower pace that goes along with the small FI and the community FI?
Yeah, I think that is a misconception. And I also think they make some assumptions that probably aren't valid as well. The pace is the same,
Right.
any organization, if you want to be successful and so forth. So the pace is the same. I would say how you allocate your time within that pace could be different because you might not have the access to the data and the tools as readily as maybe a larger organization. But that's not necessarily even true either, because lots of times at the larger organizations, a lot of folks don't know what they have and how to access it and how to leverage it. But usually, what I would say is the pace is the same. You just have to make sure you do a lot, have a broad scope to help you prepare as you do sales. In other words, your resources and tools. Your tools might look like a little bit more limited at a smaller organization, a community organization. However, your resources are greater in a lot of cases, and they're willing to help you, serve their clients. And so the pace is the same, but instead of maybe going and using a tool, you probably might leverage people more, which I think kind of goes into that whole relationship and community feel. So, yeah, there's definitely definitely the pace isn't different.
Yeah, that
Definitely
makes a
not.
lot of sense. And I'm sure, like, especially on the commercial side and business to business,
And you
longer sales
target differently.
cycles.
Yeah. And you
Right. Yeah.
target.
Yeah. Love that. I love that answer. That was great insight. Will, did you want to talk a little bit more about specifically getting into treasury management focus and revenue opportunities that Malinda sees for community financial institutions and TM?
Yeah, and specifically kind of TM as a growth engine and talking about, and really that's a mindset that is when we talk to our clients is an evolving concept and kind of that hidden gold mine that our community banks and credit unions are discovering, right? And so many community FIs view treasury management as kind of a back office function, and they don't necessarily or a support function. They don't necessarily understand that they're missing a big opportunity potentially, for moving their business along. So, from your perspective, where are the biggest missed opportunities in revenue for treasury management when it comes to community banks and credit unions?
I think community banks, and this is well documented in a lot of articles over the past couple of years, are really starting to. I don't think they thought they could compete. I also don't think they thought their products were as valuable as maybe the larger banks. And so they didn't really invest in treasury management. But what we're seeing, as you know, Will and Sarah, is that community banks realize treasury management is an annuity business, right? It's the gift that can keep on giving. And the other thing is, when you look at recent surveys of community financial institutions, their top two priorities are non interest income and deposits. Guess what can be a big contributor to both of those? That's Treasury Management. But a lot of community banks have not maybe invested in it. So, there's a lot of missed opportunities. I would say the biggest missed opportunity I see is not investing value selling in the front line. They don't understand the value and what they really could get for the services. A wire is a wire. I don't care if you're at a large bank, or a small bank. ACH, it's ACH, right? You're still providing a great service, and there's value to that. The fraud prevention services, and what I find with a lot of community banks is if they're not investing in the value selling, the front line doesn't know it, and sometimes some leadership doesn't understand it, right?
Yeah.
But what happens is, when you have increased full account waves, that's a missed opportunity. You have a lot of line item waves. That's a missed opportunity where I'll charge you for your account maintenance, but I'll give you everything else for free. Because TM has been thought as a loss leader rather than a huge revenue generator for your non-interest income and deposits. Or they deeply discount it, right, to below cost if they know their costs, but they deeply discount it, so and they give them a great ECR rate. They're pulling all the levers, and so they're leaving a lot. Most community banks leave a lot of money on the table. You don't have to charge as much as the large banks, but there is some value there. So I think that's the investment in value selling training for the front line, both RMs and if they have TM folks. The waves and discounts are missed opportunities. And then focusing on the products that actually have an impact on their clients' working capital. Those things that can accelerate your DSO, those things that can accelerate a company's DPO, those are, maybe we'll talk about it later, but those products are really important to focus in on because they can generate revenue, because you can impact your client's bottom line and make sure they stay in business because you've accelerated their working capital.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be a really good segue to the next subject. But before we leave this one, I think there's a really big missed opportunity in not training your frontline staff, because that's where in a community bank where majority of even small business and middle like the business banking, they come in and they use the retail banking center, and not recognizing those products and services and being able to at least warm hand off to a banking officer when there's a situation where they could recognize a cross sell opportunity. That's a big miss.
Yes.
And it takes a little bit of work, and but hopefully it's manageable, because we're talking about sometimes 100 million, $500 million financial institutions that have less than maybe eight or nine branches, and so we're not talking about a lot of personnel to train here, and
Mm-hmm.
and it's not such a huge concept, especially when they're not even necessarily calling it treasury management yet. They're calling it business products or product services, or these are solutions that they're offering to their business customers that are just slightly more advanced than consumer products.
Well, the other thing to add to that, Will, is that if you're a community bank, you want to retain your great people.
Absolutely.
If you invest in them and
Yep.
they're growing as bankers
Yeah.
by understanding treasury management and how
Right.
it impacts their business clients and their community, and what the bank can do to help them be successful, you're going to retain folks because you're investing in it. It says you
Yeah.
value your team members. And so you usually get a lot of payback out of when you do invest in,
Yeah.
invest in
Absolutely.
those folks that are talking to your clients.
Now let's go back to where you're talking about advancing DPO and things of that nature. We're talking about solving, not selling, and how community banks approach the gap analysis and of their TM products. So we do a lot of that with the financial institutions, and talk about how they should approach that. But instead of just listing what they don't have and how they can identify their products, like digital banking, international banking, um, and how that'll, let's talk about how that'll actually move the needle for their specific local business clients. Instead of looking at just what they don't have, like let's talk about how we can approach those gaps, right? Instead of talking about just what they don't have, right? How can we go have that conversation where we're solving, not just selling?
Yeah, I think that one, community banks need to optimize and leverage what they already have. because they've spent money and invested some capital expenditures on some good products and services, but lots of times, again, they're not optimizing everything they bought, right?
Yeah.
So that's the low hanging fruit that a product analysis can kind of say, wait a minute, you know what, you've already got this. It wouldn't cost you that much more money because you're already using it, right? You're just not using it effectively. So I think optimizing and leveraging what you have. Secondly, again, cash is king. I think your product set has to focus on cash flow, right? Um, and again, if you've invested and you understand the value of what all you can bring, I think you need to focus on those products that help clients get their receivables in quicker, manage it better when they have it, in their pocket, and slow it down as it's going out on the payables, right?
Yep.
And protecting it, the overall, the risk mitigation over the whole umbrella. I mean, fraud mitigation, those kind of services, that's mine insurance. Everyone needs to have it. And taking it from someone that had their pipes burst in this last winter thing, you want to have some good insurance. So you want to have good risk mitigation, fraud protection. And so to me, coming in and that might have changed. Maybe the last time someone's looked at it might have been five years ago. A lot has changed in the product space. And
Yeah.
that's why it's good to maybe relook at your product roadmap and reprioritize whatever's going to do to help your team, your clients mitigate risk and impact the working capital. And those can generate revenue for the bank, but also help out the clients. So to me, I would be focusing in on, and it can kind of, I'll be honest, sometimes that can rub community banks um, some people's it can trigger them, right? Because all of a sudden something that was important and we were really focused on for 2 or 3 years and working toward can't generate as much revenue. It
Right.
doesn't hit 80% of our client base. It's only hitting maybe
Yep.
20%, right? And it might be the cool fancy thing to do, but it's not for what our target market
Yeah.
needs. And so
Yeah.
sometimes there's some internal struggles to go there, but that's why I always go back to focus on cash flow. Cash is king. Focus on those products and then be constantly analyzing it because we live in a fast-paced industry. A lot of regulatory changes and technology advancements.
Yeah.
So,
And I want to go back on something you said very early in your comments, which was, you know, and this approach we take, we build onto. We don't rip and replace. And a lot of times when an FI is not experienced in this, they think, well, there must be something wrong with our digital experience. There must be something wrong with our payables process. And so right away they want to go to replacing the online banking system. And we know from our experience that they pretty much do the same things. And a lot of times they want to blame it on a servicing issue, or they want to blame it on that there must be something wrong with the feature function. And listen, a good salesperson can sell around feature function all day long. It's not that. And you hit onto the nail on the head. They're missing basic receivable processes, and that's where we try to focus our first set of gaps that we try to help them with, and we have solutions here that we've aligned ourselves with to help them do those quickly. And I think that's the important thing and the important message is, when you work with DeNovo Treasury, we don't try and do rip and replace here. We're not advocates of that. As a matter of fact, that's going to set you back further
yep.
and put you back further against the competition. Because we'll find very quickly, we do a gap analysis with you. We're going to find that your local and your regional competition, they're using the same usual suspects as you are. And so they're going to have the same problems that you're having, and might as well move on and do something different with the other things. So thanks for pointing that out. It's definitely yeah,
Being in an executive position, I know I look at you got to justify these business cases. And
absolutely.
it's always a lot less if you can optimize, or enhance what you already have. The
Hmm.
rails are already in place, the integration's already in place,
Yep.
right? And I think that's, sometimes you don't know what you don't know, and it's good to have folks like our
Yep.
DeNovo team that can come in
Yeah.
and say, here's what, you really don't need to rip and replace,
No,
right?
you don't.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's a lot cheaper.
It
That
sure
makes
is.
the board
Yeah.
happy.
It does. And it's not again, these are not significant differences between these platforms. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to hear this thing about putting this an awful thing, putting lipstick on a pig or anything like that. They are all the same. So we're not going to like use that analogy because
That's
um,
true.
no, and it could be too that you're not maximizing things that the vendor does because maybe you've gotten frustrated with
Mm-hmm.
talking to them or you've missed something in a contract. Listen, we can help with that too. So
That's a really
uh,
good point.
yeah, so segueing into something else, and let's talk about the competitive edge here. It does kind of relate with your background in competitive analysis. How can a smaller FI use a specialized treasury management suite to win a deal away from a larger regional or national competitor? You've got a lot of experience, obviously, working with those financial institutions. I think you're uniquely positioned to help a smaller FI win. How would you recommend to do that?
Early in my sales career, after I had done operations and product, I really liked, not everyone, this isn't everyone's superpower, but I really liked going out and prospecting. And I was with a smaller organization at the time and wanted to compete with, the big three, the big five, in the East, on the East Coast. And everyone thought I was crazy. But again, I think where the community banks can play in any space is one thing we learned from the pandemic. Let me back backspace a little bit here. Is that everyone wants to connect. Everyone felt disconnected, right? And what do you always see in all of the bank surveys, of clients? They want to see their people, want to see their bankers, but only if they're going to bring them, insight and not waste their time, right? So I think where the community FIs can outperform even their peers and the larger banks is be just fanatical and very disciplined with true relationship strategy and call plan. And what that means is, calling on a regular basis, right? I already have it scheduled. When I did this and I got my foot in the door in some top 50 organizations around the country because I they knew that I would be either we had a standing meeting for just short meeting, 15 minutes to half hour, monthly or quarterly. And during that meeting, I would provide insight. In other words, they always wanted to know, tell me what I don't know, right? Tell me what I've missed that's going on in my industry. So having a regular call plan where you're having touches, having a regular marketing plan that's bringing them content and insight. Because if you can help that, community banks the same way in credit unions. If you can help your contact look good to the owner or look good to a board, right? Because you're helping them be smarter. You haven't sold anything, but you know who they're going to come to when they need advice? It's going to be you, right? Well, guess who doesn't have time to have that close relationship? The larger banks.
Right.
They don't have that. And or they might have pockets of people that do it and they're their top salespeople, their top bankers.
Right.
It's in a smaller community bank, you can make sure your whole front line is doing that, where you're having a regular call plan, you have a strategic, thought out, year in advance marketing plan where they get touched, not too much, but with stuff that matters to their industry, to their personal life, their community, or to the company. And so I think having that regular connection, bringing insight, and just being aware, seeing what's going on. There's so many tools out there. You can see if someone's in the news, right? Either people or the organization. Are they,
Right.
are they developing a new line? Did they just win a new contract? Congratulate them. I mean, it's just building relationships, and the larger institutions I've been a part of. It's hard for them to do that. You know, in a large scale, and a community FI can do that within their business group and their target market, and beat every time because it's worth some dollars All the surveys say that, they know me, right? So that when a bad time, 2008, or, some kind of financial crisis happens,
Sure.
a pandemic, they're going to stick through there with me. And the community banks, by the way, through the PPP loans, were the ones that delivered, you know, they're the ones that delivered. That was a great example of it. So community banks can have that edge, but they have to have a strategic plan that they execute on, and everyone's executing on it.
And that's really a good segue, Sarah, if you want to take the next series here.
Yeah, and it's the perfect natural transition into some of these questions before we close out for our session today. I like what you mentioned about having that relationship with them and bringing them value, but value that makes them feel like they get to be the hero in the conversations with their C-suite, or they get to be the hero in conversations with their board or whomever they report to. So getting over maybe like those first couple of touch points with them, like when you're really like starting the relationship, right? It's almost like dating, but it's like business dating where you got to break the ice. You're getting to know them, they're getting to know you. What's your secret at staying top of mind with that prospect in helping them feel like comfortable opening up to you, and maybe a little bit more of a disarming approach where they're willing to listen to you but also share what they're going through when you're only talking to them for, like you said, like once a quarter or maybe once a month for very short periods of time without being the annoying salesperson who just wants to get on their calendar.
Yeah, what say, because I'm out talking to a lot of community banks or credit
Mhm.
unions, or I'm out talking if I'm at a community FI. I'm out talking to a lot of local businesses, and what I'll say is, I'm hearing this is what based on my right. This is what I'm bringing to the table. I'm bringing them insight. Here's some challenges I'm hearing from other companies in your industry or in this area, right? Is this something that, and we're looking, at doing this possibly to kind of help, minimize this obstacle or, lower the stress with it. Is that something that you're dealing with too? Or is it, or are you dealing with something else? And if they're not dealing with it, they're going to tell you that's something else, right? And then, and what I try to do is whoever they're either, if it's with us or with another organization, I'm going to give them, based on my knowledge and experience, hey, here's something I'm hearing about that. Would you like to get more information on this? And by the way, not only can we do it, but the bank you're currently at can do this. But I can tell you what happens is, even though I tell them you could go to this other bank and they can do this, but we can do this to help you too as well,
Mhm.
because I brought them the insight and I came to them. I didn't, just say, hey, what's your pain points? That's so old school, right? I said, here's what other people
What
are.
keeps you up at night?
Yeah, yeah. What keeps you up? And oh my gosh, yes, that's so old school. It's, what they expect you to be smarter with in today's world. We should come there more prepared, know more about that company. And
Right. There's no
they
shortage
will
of
typically say,
information out
what,
there.
because you brought that to me, I will, hey, I'd rather just do it with you, right? Because if you
Right.
can do it, so that's part of it. The other thing is that I try to open the door again to try to get them to know better. Just say, hey, I'd love to come in and do a process review. This is good to do internally at a community FI as well, but do a process review, soups to nuts, right? And just and basically consulting for a small business, without going to one of the big guys, right? Let them, and some things they're not selling anything. You're just saying, here's some things you want to, here's some findings like you do with any consulting, and a community bank can do this. And here's some considerations you might want to consider. I'll just give one example real quickly. We did this for a company, a small community company, probably on the upper end of the business, for small business, but still was a local company.
Sure.
We met with the executives first, and they said, well, yeah, sure. They were with another institution, and said, yeah, you can come in and to say, hey, we'd love just to come in and see if there's anything, just do a pulse check, do a health check, right? and you can, whatever our findings are, you can take and do whatever you want to with it. I'll never forget that it's a small company. we were we had just got done speaking with someone in payroll, and I went back out to their lobby to before they could give me to someone like in payables. And the receptionist, a really nice person, been with the company I think like close to 20 years. She, by the way, let me back up just a little bit. When we met with the executive, say, can we do this? We said, hey, do you offer direct deposit? And they said, yes, everyone's on direct deposit. So I just made note of it. Now, fast forward, I'm sitting up there in front of and I had talked to payroll and realized that no, only the executive team was on direct deposit. No one else was on direct deposit. Then we get up to the receptionist desk.
Oh, wow.
He's stuffing manual payroll checks into the envelopes, the receptionist is.
Uh-huh.
While I was waiting for the next person to take me to do some analysis on their processes, she goes to lunch and leaves the payroll checks on the desk, laying out. So I can see what Will makes. I can see what Sarah's making. Not in addition that they could get, because to get in the building it was secure, but it's just the
still anyone
confidentiality of it.
in that building can go.
So we didn't sell anything. One of the things we found is that, hey, we could probably do a direct deposit campaign, right? Because it's only the executive team that's on that, right? And we have one of the things we consider is that giving a locked drawer to the receptionist, so when she goes to lunch, she can put the paychecks in a locked drawer. So we're not calling the baby ugly. It's just saying here's some things to consider. Even though they within 6 months, we end up moving that whole relationship over, the lending, the wealth, the 401k, and the TM over to our bank, because we came in and we didn't say, it wasn't like hard selling. We said, here's some things you ought to we talked about some banking stuff too, but we just gave them a full flush. And they said, no one's done this for us. And we said, hey, we're willing to come out here every, 2 or 3 years and do this again, see what else we can tweak. And so we won the business. Community banks can do that all day long.
Right.
They're just not going to do that at the large banks. So
yeah, that was a really good example and kind of surprising, although I guess maybe not so surprising to hear, and especially because you think about things, and like I keep reading and hearing about things like earned wage access, and here, folks, not everyone in the organization is even on direct deposit. So
yeah, this was just a few years ago, by the way.
yeah, it sounded like it was fairly recent.
Yes.
I would consider within 5 years to be recent memory. Maybe 10 is a stretch, but yeah, that was a great anecdote. Well, did you have any other thoughts or questions for Malinda before we close out today?
Well, no, I mean, it's great to have you at DeNovo, and you talked about why you're helping community banks, and maybe why DeNovo? Why did you choose DeNovo Treasury? I think that's a good question to ask.
That's the hot seat question.
I got referred to someone that I value their opinion and thoughts and respect them. You're right. I didn't know any folks at DeNovo.
No.
Then I went out and looked at the website and some other stuff that was going on, and Sarah and her team, like, wow, this is pretty great content out here, right? And I was kind of, and the fact that it was, I looked at the vision and the values before we even had a conversation, Will.
Yeah.
And I looked at the team members, the board, your advisory board members. I loved, like I said, going back to that original question, I was at a point where I really wanted to leverage my experience and knowledge to help other, community FIs to be successful, especially in the TM space, because it is such a great opportunity for a lot of they're not maximizing what all they can get out of TM, and which also means they're not able to maybe meet all the needs, and maybe could be vulnerable with their business clients, right? Because TM is the operational side of the house. I always say this because if a client can't make their loan payment because your loan system's down at the bank, their business doesn't go out of business. But if your treasury management, they can't collect their receivables or pay their bills, they're out of business, right? So, I think I loved that DeNovo was focused on these communities and community FIs. So I really like that. And I will tell you, very impressed with, as you know, as the team has grown, there's some extremely sharp,
There are.
have a ton of experience, and folks that you could lean on in a team environment. So really love the just love the people. And as you get further in your career, I think everyone knows it's important who you work for and who you work with, and that's got a lot of value to it. And so that's
Agreed.
what drove me here. So now I'm looking forward to meeting all the community banks around the
Yeah.
country.
Yeah.
See if we can help them.
And I
Started.
have a message for all those community banks and credit unions out there that were trying to hire Malinda. You can, and you can hire them through us. You can hire her through
Yeah.
us. So, there could be benefit to many,
Yep.
and we're ready to come work with you. So, we are grateful to have you here, Malinda. Thank you for today. And Sarah, did you have anything to wrap it up with?
Well, I loved that answer personally. And I think we'll have to have a separate segment on perhaps how important brand building is for community financial institutions and tacked onto that relationship management perspective that you shared. And of course, you're so right. It's really all about the people that you work with and work for. And I think that that's the beauty of DeNovo Treasury and what Will has built here. So really love that you put that out there and wanted to call that out because it's a part of who we are. And I think that resonates a lot with our clients too. And it will resonate with our future clients this year. So thank you for coming on the show, Malinda. We're glad to have you on in the DeNovo, and we are glad to have you in our organization. For all of our listeners, thank you for tuning in. You know the drill. Please like, comment, share. This episode is going to be aired on YouTube, but if YouTube is not your preference and you found us here, you can also find us on Spotify if you prefer to listen with or without video. So we are also on Spotify for podcasts now as well. As always, thanks for tuning in, and we will see you next time.
Tell your friends about us.
Bye, everyone.